from FEMA. I'm going to turn it over to him for a few brief remarks.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this seminar. We've had great success with this in the past. I want to thank you for taking time to join us tonight. And I know we've got a lot of familiar faces joining, but also some first-timers. And I want to start off by thanking you all for your service to your communities and to our district. The work of our fire departments and our first responders are just absolutely invaluable. You are the backbone of our small towns. As someone that grew up in a small town, I know what the volunteer service meant to our communities. And as I travel around this district, it's crystal clear that remains today. And in our district, we have very few professional fire services. I mean, it's mostly small communities that I have the honor to represent in Washington. I want to do everything I can to help you put your best foot forward in this grant opportunity. You know, this is a huge boost for the companies that get it. And it's important dollars that, you know, we're appropriating in Washington. Once we set the size of the pie, I want the biggest slice of the pie possible to come back here to our district. So hopefully you're all preparing your grants, and we're joined by personnel from FEMA to give the tips, to answer the questions. And, you know, we developed a seminar to make sure that you have the information and the assistance needed to successfully navigate the grants process. And last year we had huge success with this seminar, and the proof is in the dollar signs. I'm proud to share that we were able to secure nearly $1.7 million in funding for our departments across the 23rd District through FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, the AFG, and the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, the SAFER Grant Program. Those were the awards last year. That's a tremendous win for our departments who rely on these resources, and I want to build on that even further this year. Was very honored to recently deliver a keynote address at the annual Home Day event at Ward Apparatus in Horseheads, where we discussed the importance of providing our firefighters and our first responders with high quality, top of the line, up-to-date equipment. And I've also always been a staunch supporter of these FEMA programs in the Assistance to Firefighters Grants programs, because the funds go directly to you. There's no state middleman. You know, they don't get stuck in Albany like many of our federal grants programs. This goes directly to those departments, and I think that's the way we got to keep it. And I'm sure some of you might know this, but roughly 80% of the federal funding gets block granted to the state, and they decide where it goes. And you know, oftentimes get stuck in the big urban centers in our state, and not in the small communities that I have the honor to represent in Western New York in the Southern Tier. This keeps volunteer departments at the forefront, this program, and whether it's for a new fire truck or personal protective equipment or training programs or upgrading our communication systems, I want you to have what you need to get your company's job done safely and effectively. And we should never, ever be faced with a tragedy that a firefighter is injured or lost of life because they were working with inadequate or obsolete tools. And, you know, I know you don't have unlimited budgets. You know, you're out fundraising, you know, municipal budgets are tight. You know, you have to make do with less. This program is supposed to be that lifeline, adding other opportunities to bring different revenue streams in. And hopefully this seminar will help you put your best foot forward in this process. So for those of you who may be new to preparing one of these grants, I want everyone to know that our office is here as a resource to you. Whether it's helping with the application, answering questions, writing letters of support, we are here to assist you every step of the way as you file this and it gets completed. My staff and I are fully committed to making sure that your applications get the full and fair consideration that they deserve from FEMA and the other federal agencies. And we want to ensure that you leave this seminar with the knowledge and the tools that you need to submit a successful application this year. And Elvin Matthew has joined us again this year. We're very grateful for his time. He serves as the fire program specialist at FEMA, and he can walk you through the process and answer any technical questions that you may have. is, some of you are old pros and have gotten really good at this. Some are new to the process, but you got to be in it to win it. And, I firmly believe that the needs of our communities need to be addressed. That's what this program's for. That's why Congress continues to appropriate the funds for this. And trust me, there are fiscal hawks out there that target this out every year and suggest zeroing it out and think local departments should not be relying on federal funds. I firmly believe that we need to, up the ante on programs like this, so that our small towns in rural communities have the ability to compete. Now, unfortunately, I can't stay with you on the line because I'm playing hooky from the Rules Committee right now. I'm in the back room, but I wanted the opportunity to say hello and visit with you for a moment before Alvin kicks this off. We're so grateful for Alvin doing this, but Jesse Prieto, my district director, and Cameron from our district team are here to assist in any way, shape, or form after this seminar is over. But please reach out to us, engage with us, and I hope you have a very successful application process this year. And we're going to do everything we can to help you get over the finish line. So God bless you all. Stay safe and give my best to all of the members of your departments.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you.
All right. That being said, we're going to move right into the program. We have Alvin from FEMA, who's going to be leading into a slide presentation. Sharpen your pens, get your pencils out. And he's going to take it over. It runs about an hour to hour and 15. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. I think his plan is to try and run through this as succinctly as possible with questions at the end. If for some reason you can't stay till the end and you have questions, I'm going to put my cell phone in the chat as well as our email address, and we can get those followed up and written after. And any information that we have, we will disseminate to everybody who participated today. So without further ado, here is Alvin from FEMA. Thanks, Alvin.
Hey, thank you, Jesse. And thank you to the Congressman Langworthy for putting this webinar together. Congressman Langworthy definitely hit the nail on that one. I mean, every fire department on the call today, every fire department in general are the true first responders. I mean, you guys are there before, during, and after a disaster. So thank you for everything you do. The fire departments and EMS departments are keeping our communities safe, and without the proper tools and equipment, they just can't get the job done. So again, thank you for everything. So again, for those who've been with us before, who attended the previous webinars or the workshops that Congressman Langworthy has put together, the AFG professionals, the seasoned veterans, you might recognize some of these slides are a bit familiar, or they resemble what you've seen in the past. And again, I'm sorry if it seems repetitive, but I really want to focus on the most important info for the 2025 application so that you have what you need to make the process easier. And after the presentation, sometime today or maybe tomorrow, I will send out the slides and I will put some really handy tips and tricks together on the slide as well, and also provide some backup documentation, some user guides to help you through the process. All right, let me turn off my video and get this going. Share my screen. Okay. Okay. So first off, before we start on any of the major stuff, I really want to let you know that there are, other than myself, there are other resources you could choose from. And I know if some of you have been trying to reach out to me in the last few weeks, I do apologize. It's just, I'm a one-man show up in the region, so I will get to you, when if I get a chance. So I do apologize. But however, at the same time, there are two other resources you could use from. You have the AFG help desk. There are individuals at the help desk that are staffed daily. You could contact them 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Their number's on the screen right there, or you could reach out to them via email. And the second source, or the third source, I guess, resource is the AFG program website. A bunch of these user guides and documents are that I will be sending out. You can find that there on that website. There is a link on the screen. Using my laser pointer. You click on this link and it will take you to the website where it will have all the useful documentation. If you haven't already done so, please sign up on our monthly newsletter. The newsletter does give periodic updates with AFG. So it gives you updates on when the process starts, or when the application period started, and when it's going to end, and any other general updates in between that. Very, very, very important. I think in the last week and a half, I have been getting some SAM.gov issues or technical issues. If you don't have a FEMA Go account, okay, you won't be able to sign up for an AFG application. The AFG application is only available through FEMA Go. So if it's been a while, log into FEMA Go. That's where you'll submit everything. And just a heads up, I think last year or the year before that, FEMA Go does utilize login.gov now. So if you have a FEMA Go account, or if you need to submit your application, you haven't started a FEMA Go account yet, you need to create a login.gov account. And just a heads up, if you cannot log into FEMA Go because of any technical issues, I cannot help you unlock accounts or reset passwords. If you have an issue, any technical issues, please shoot me an email or reach out to the AFG help desk, and somebody will get you to the right point of contact. All right, SAM.gov. I mentioned it earlier that SAM.gov is very important. If you haven't done so, just make sure your SAM account has been updated or is updated. Your SAM account expires every year. And if it's been a while since you've logged in, just log in and take a look at your account. If you've forgotten your password or username, just call the SAM.gov, or excuse me, reach out to SAM.gov via the little link here at the bottom. Just like FEMA Go, I don't have access to SAM.gov, and I can't reset passwords or unlock accounts. SAM is managed by a different federal agency. It's managed by GSA. But most importantly, you want to make sure your SAM is up to date. Again, last week and the week before, I have been getting calls and emails about getting SAM.gov updated. If it expires, it could take anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks, sometimes a little longer than that. And everybody here at FEMA or AFG really wants to get your grant funds to your account, but we cannot do that unless your SAM.gov is active. All right, so the 2025 AFG application period is open. It opened on 8 a.m. on May 19th, and it will end at 5 p.m. on June 22nd. All right, so for today's agenda, I'm going to give you a little overview of the AFG program and its components. I'll give you a little brief discussion on the award process and what you need to be doing now to prepare and apply. All right. And the game plan for today is I'm going to give you a quick rundown of AFG, talk about the whole awarding process, how it works, walk you through building your application, and most importantly, showing you how to write a solid narrative. Very important. All right, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to help you get you through the scoring rounds, especially the computer pre-score, and boost your chances. And if it is your first time and you've never applied for an AFG grant or haven't snagged an award yet, I think it's very, very important to understand how this whole process works. I'm really going to hit hard on the importance of your narratives. And I'm going to throw out words such as NOFO and high priority, because trust me, it really matters that much. All right, so for the 2025 AFG program and also the other fire grant program, um, there is a total amount of $648 million available nationwide for all three programs. For AFG, that's what we're talking about today. There is about $291 million in this pot of money right here. Okay. And then you have SAFER, which is the staffing for adequate fire and emergency response. This program, it essentially helps departments with staffing and recruitment. It has around $324 million available. And then the final fire grant program is the fire prevention and safety program. This program helps supports fire prevention activities. It has a pot of about $32.4 million. All right, I'm going to go into more details on the next few slides on how those funds are distributed. All right, it's important for you to know who is eligible for the AFG grant and who can apply. And this goes out to SAFER and FP&S grants as well. From my understanding, SAFER and FP&S is being rolled out at the same time. So this definitely is important to know if you are going to apply for SAFER and FP&S. If you are a fire department or a fire district, whether you're full-time, paid, volunteer, or combination, if you report to NERIS and even NIFRS, if you reported to NIFRS and you currently report to NERIS, you are eligible to apply for the AFG grant. All right. Non-affiliated EMS organizations. If you provide medical transport, like an ambulance corps, a rescue squad, and you're not affiliated with a hospital, a fire department, or a university, you could apply. If you are a public or a nonprofit 501c3 or a 501c4, you can apply. And the last eligible applicant is the State Fire Training Academy. I'm not too sure, but I doubt it. If there are anybody on the call today from the State Fire Training Academy. Every State Fire Training Academy is eligible for an award. However, I do want to let you know that State Fire Training Academies have their own separate application and do not compete with fire departments or EMS organizations. All right, so for all that money I spoke about earlier, right, that $648 million or so, this diagram, this little blue winter green lifesaver what we got going on here, shows how that's broken down and how that's spread out, and it's going to explain to you who's getting what. I think it's important for you to know that all career, combination, and volunteer fire departments that are applying all get an equal share of 25%, of no less than 25% of the award. And I've emphasized no less because that number could potentially jump through open competition right here at 10%. Again, 25% goes to career, 25% goes to combination, and 25% goes to volunteer departments. And that is 75% spread evenly between all three departments. Okay, and then we break it down a little further. You have your State Fire Training Academies that only compete with themselves, only get 3% of that funding. FP&S, the Fire Prevention and Safety, it makes up 10% of that award. And then non-affiliated EMS agencies will get no less than 2%. And lastly, I did speak about it earlier, the open competition, this makes up 10%. And that 10% will be spread out based on the best application, regardless of where they came from. All right, and then we will add it on top of the 25% that's already there. So that 25% for volunteer, career, and combination departments can potentially go up in percentage points based on the open competition. All right, so just a heads up, if you get an AFG award, you are responsible for a local share. Now, I have been getting a few inquiries recently about the local share, so I think it's very important to understand this. A local share, which means that you have to cover a certain percentage of the cost, okay? And that percentage depends on your population size. All right, so for example, if your population is 20,000 or less, FEMA covers 95% of the bill, and you're just on the hook for the remaining 5%. If you're between 20,000 and 1 million in population, that share goes up to 10%. And for the big cities, all right, the big cities, FDNY, New York City, Boston, percentage can go up to 15%. I think it's also really important to know some funding restriction based on populations. So if you're gonna, when you apply, you will see on the screen something called the community description. All right. Basically, we just want you to take a look at your population and the amount of money that you will get based off your population. All right. The population in the jurisdiction you serve is going to determine the max amount of eligible program funding that you can receive. Okay. So if your population is at 100,000 or less, the maximum allowable amount you can receive is $1 million. If your population is between 100,000 and 1 to 500,000 people, you will receive no less than $2 million. And you can see on this chart, it goes a little bit further than that. All right, just a quick note about the criteria development panel. I'm going to really talk today about priorities from medium priority, high priority, low priority. I really want you to know that FEMA does not determine any of the priorities, okay? It doesn't determine the priority of a firefighter. It doesn't determine the priority of an EMT. That priority is determined by this panel. And this panel is made up of the 9 major fire service organizations, okay? It is a criteria, it's the criteria development panel that determines those priorities. And these organizations are made up of first responders, just like yourselves, and they will determine what are the high, medium, and low priorities. And then they will submit those priorities to FEMA, and then we will receive those as recommendations. If you have any questions with the CDP, or if you would like to be a part of the panel, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your affiliate programs on this list. Also, if you are considering becoming a peer review panelist, I would also reach out to your affiliate on this list as well. All right, I just want to give you a little breakdown on the application and awarding process. Just like any FEMA grant, the AFG has its own life cycle. And it all starts with a NOFO, or the notice of funding. And again, I'm going to throw out this word a lot. The NOFO, think of the NOFO as your playbook, right? It lays out what FEMA is looking for and what's most important for AFG awards. The NOFO tells you when you can start applying and when the window closes. It gives you the list of the priorities. It gives you any restrictions or requirements or any updates that's going to happen for the FY25 application. It's going to be in the NOFO, okay? All right. The application period basically is, I stated earlier, it opened at 8 a.m. on May 19th, and it ends at 5 p.m. on June 22nd. So please don't miss out on that short time frame. And then once you hit the submit button, your application goes on to the next stage, which is the electronic scoring stage. Basically, this is the stage where a computer checks your answers on what you submitted, and it adds up points based on what you select. So some of the questions are worth more than the others. They're weighted, especially those that are tied to high priority items in the NOFO. So the more points you rack up, the better your chances of moving on to the peer review panel. If your score isn't high enough, your application stops right there, and it will not go beyond this go beyond this stage into the panel stage, or even technical review stage, and you will not get the award. And here's the big takeaway. All right, focus on those high priority items in the NOFO. Right, those questions that you're going to submit are weighted, and if you choose anything below high priority item, you're not going to get the highest amount of points. Okay, And I'll keep bringing it up because those high priority items really do matter. And they're your best shot of scoring well for this program. All right, so now there are some things you cannot control, like the age of your equipment or your call volume. And those are weighted separately. For example, if you're trying to replace bunker gear or SCBAs that are only 7 or 8 years old, you will get a low score and you might not make it to peer review panels. All right, so when you're deciding what to ask for, make sure it's stuff or equipment that's really old and needs replacing, or it's worn out, broken. Make sure it is that. And the key takeaway is the older, the better. And the older it is, the better for your score. All right, if you make it to the peer review panel for your application, it goes to a room full of first responders, okay? And they'll read through everything you submitted on your application. And they will decide whether to recommend you to FEMA or not recommend you to FEMA. If they do recommend you to FEMA, your application then goes on to technical reviews or tech reviews. All right. In the tech reviews session, it is just what FEMA it's just for FEMA, right? It's not going to be reviewed by the panelists. It's going to just be reviewed by us, okay, at AFG. We just want to double check your eligibility, okay? We want to make sure you are a fire department or you are an EMS department, all right? We're not scoring you here. We just want to make sure everything that you put in for matches up. Like, all right, let's just take, for example, if you put in for a new engine and the current engine that you're trying to replace is 35 years old, and you state that engine is 35 years old, we will use the VIN number for that engine, matched up to the DMV records, and make sure that engine is in fact 35 years old, okay? And then finally, after the application goes through tech reviews, it goes on to awarding process, okay? And this process can take anywhere between 12 to 15 weeks, all right? And then the process starts all over again with a new NOFO for the next year. And we're going to talk about the NOFO. All right, I cannot stress how important it is to comb through the NOFO, read the first page and read through the last page. There's a lot of information in there for you to understand and know. In your application, again, if you put anything with a red H, a high priority item, you will get the highest amount of points for what you've asked for. If you put anything with the medium, the blue M over here, or low, the gray L, you will get the lowest amount of points and will possibly and most likely not pass the computer pre-score. Okay. All right. Again, I just want to remind you that FEMA Go is where the application is located and where you will be submitting your application. All right. All right. So I'm not going to go into too much details with logging in through FEMA Go. I think the best course to understand FEMA Go a little bit better is going through step-by-step, going through a step-by-step user document guideline, and that's the best way of getting it through with FEMA Go. But here is a screenshot of the login. Okay. If you're unfamiliar with this stage, you really need to get going and get familiar with it because you only have a few weeks left. All right. And again, like I mentioned earlier, just an update from last year or the year before, you need to have a login.gov account. If you have already done so, that's great. If not, FEMA Go does require you to create a login.gov. All right. If you do not have a login.gov account, do you want to visit the website by clicking on this little link over here? And at the login page, create an account and follow the prompts to create your account. All right. Also, it's really important. You want to make sure that the person creating the account is the eBiz point of contact in SAM. Because what FEMA Go does, it migrates all the information from SAM into FEMA Go. And that's why I mentioned earlier that the SAM process could take a long time because that not only do you have to update the SAM account information, that SAM account, once it gets updated, has to reflect FEMA Go. So please make sure your SAM account is up to date. All right. And after you log into FEMA Go, and this is what the homepage looks like. Okay. If you are familiar with the screen, again, that's great. And this is the first thing you will see once you log in. On the left-hand side is where you will see all the grants that you're working on or all the grants that you have currently been awarded. Okay. On the right-hand side are all the grants that are made available to you. I know the screenshot is a little bit old because it is given COVID-19, but the new FY25 will be here as well. It's going to say Assistant Firefighter Grants Program 2025. All right, so what you do next is you click on the little button here that says Start Application, and that's it. It's going to start your application process. All right, so we're done with the administrative stuff, okay? Let's begin with the fun stuff. All right, and it starts off with, what is the process of applying? What do you need to start to apply? All right, with any big project, you need to start off with the plan. You need to prepare. And that is what I'll talk about in the next few slides. All right, so we're here now at the planning and preparation stage. So now you know what you need to start the application, right? You need your FEMA Go account, you need your SAM account, you need to get all that squared away before you start your application process. So let's talk about how you're going to plan and prepare. In this section here, doesn't only apply to AFG, but it also works with your safer application as well, especially when you get to your narratives, right? You essentially want to make the application as attractive as possible, especially to the peer reviewers, because they are the ones that will review your application. And one of the most important parts of this phase is you want to figure out what it is you're going to ask for. And before you start your application, I want you to conduct a risk assessment. And this step will go a long way. And as a matter of fact, I highly, highly recommend you mention you did a risk assessment in your narratives. I'm going to bring it up again when we discuss the narratives. It's going to make your application more attractive. All right. In the end of the risk assessment, you want to develop a list of items that you need, and you need to prioritize those items. So just walk around, take a look at your department, right? Take a look at your department inventory. Make a list of all the oldest stuff that you got. If it's turnout gear that's really old, it's tearing apart, or it's torn, it's wearing out. You have air packs that are outdated, or even thermal imaging cameras that are super old. Okay, stuff that's broken or inoperable, stuff that's eating away at your budget because you have to keep getting it fixed and repaired. Make sure you note that down. Okay. What are the highest risk items in my inventory that will get my firefighters to be the most effective and efficient during the APRIF response? That is what you want to include on this risk assessment, okay? And then you open up the NOFO and compare your list of priorities to the priorities of the NOFO. And what I mean by priorities here is, right, you see on your slide, the high priority. You want to make sure the priorities that you have in your risk assessment align with the priorities of the program or the priorities in the NOFO. Okay. All right. Let's just say, for example, that you conducted a risk assessment and your department's priorities are rescue rope, hose, and a boat. And you put in for a rescue rope, you put in for a hose, and you put in for a boat. Okay. Doesn't matter what type of boat it is. It could be an inflatable boat, right? If you look in the NOFO, you're going to see that the rescue rope and a hose is a high priority item, and the boat is a medium priority item. All right. That one priority item that you put in for is going to give you the lowest amount of points and essentially drag your application down to the point it will get rejected at the computer pre-score stage, and it will not progress to the next stage. All right. And I get it. There are many fire departments that have waterways or flooding issues in their jurisdiction, and a boat is super necessary, right? And it's going to provide that best protection. But since it's not a high priority item in the NOFO, it's not going to get you the highest points, all right? I really wanted to reiterate that you put anything with that blue M or gray L, I'm sorry, we'll see you next year, all right? And I cannot stress enough how it is important to check and double check the NOFO. If it's not in the NOFO, then forget about it. Okay. AFG is really meant to give you basic firefighting and EMS equipment. Okay. In the last 2 or 3 months, I've seen many departments reach out to me asking me, hey, what happened? I thought I had a great application, a great narrative. I put in for things that we did need, and I go in their application and I review the items that they put in for, and one item most of the time was a culprit of the reason why they got rejected. They probably had a great narrative, but in this case, this narrative, was rejected because of that one item. Okay. I'm sorry, could you hold on?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to drop the most updated NOFO in the chat so you can see a direct link. I'd suggest saving that. Just to reiterate what Alvin was saying is basically, and I will turn my camera back on here. If, as you see through the NOFO, it's quite extensive. If you have any questions about what you're looking for, you're happy to run it through our office. But it's not necessarily what you think is the most emergent item that your fire department needs. It's what the federal government's willing to pay for that you also need. That's the best way to look at it. So while some of you might want a new fire truck, if the air packs are at or have expired based on the OSHA regulations, that's what you want to go for, right? Because money is fungible. Another $100,000 off the top of your budget that you don't have to go to the town or the fire district, tax district, or however your fundraiser for. That's a lot of pancake breakfast to come up with $100,000. Go for that, right? Look at emergency or urgent needs first that match with the NOFO. NOFO stands for Notice of Funding Opportunity. Alvin, if you could look in the chat, I'm pretty sure I put the right in FY25. It was updated May 18th, 2026. That's the date it was on FEMA. Okay, great. So it is the right. I would have everybody click that just so you have it on a separate tab and it's still there when we all hang up. When we leave, the chat will disappear. The congressman and our team will not disappear, but the links that I'm sending you there will. It's good to click now. But again, looking through this, you can reach out to our office after to see, see how it fits. But you're looking through a Venn diagram of what your office needs and what the federal government has on their list of what is considered critical equipment. Alvin, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right. Go on to the next slide. All right. All right. This is very, very important. The community classification. Okay. One of the items that you will be asked for in your application is to determine your community classification, whether you are urban, suburban, or rural. And I will discuss this later on as well in terms of swim lanes. You're going to hear me say that a few times. All right. So this section here, this community classification, can play a role in determining if some of the things are high, medium, or low priority for your agency. It also plays a role in determining the swim lane you will be competing in during the electronic pre-score stage, right? And you notice the 4 criteria that I have on the screen, right? Population, hydrant usage, water supply, the land use, if it's how much percentage of agriculture versus commercial usage, and the number of stations per square mile. Okay, this is all categorized in this classification. All right. We also recommend using population as a tiebreaker if your jurisdiction has a mix of these criteria. Okay. In the application, you will be asked about critical infrastructure. What are some critical infrastructures? We're talking about hospitals, a major industrial area, schools, bridges, universities. What you need to ask yourself, what critical infrastructure, if damaged or destroyed, would have a significant impact on my community? Okay, FEMA is in the disaster world. We want to know, what do you protect yourself, or what do you protect during a disaster or during an emergency? Okay, if you put in your critical infrastructure that your department protects, it's going to make your application more attractive. So please add your critical infrastructure in your narratives and in your application. You're also going to need to know your call volume. And this mainly goes out to all fire departments on the call, right? For your non-affiliated EMS agencies, just letting you know that call volume, we do not require it. It's just for fire departments. All right, since we are in calendar year 2026, we will be looking for call volume numbers from 2025, 2024, and 2023. And just to note, we are only looking for the aggregated numbers for each of the call volume series. So for fire calls, we are only looking for a total of those series 100 calls. Grant writers, okay. I know some of you on the call are using a grant writer, and that is absolutely allowable to hire a grant writer. It's fine, okay? As a matter of fact, if you are awarded, we will reimburse grant writer fees for up to $1,500. And I want to let you know, if you hire a grant writer and you pay the grant writer, but you do not get the award, we will not reimburse you for the grant writer, okay? Only if you are awarded and you put in grant writer fees in the application, you will get reimbursed for up to $1,500, okay? And this is very important. This is an important step. You must pay your grant writer fees within 90 days of the NOFO release and within 30 days after the application period closes, right? Grant writer services must be competitively procured. So we do want to see if you followed your procurement policy. And just a note, you got to submit, in addition to the procurement policy, you also have to submit the contract with your grant writer, a copy of the invoice, and a copy of the payment method, such as canceled checks. All right, so there are 3 different types of AFG applications you can submit for, or you should be submitting, and it doesn't hurt to submit all 3 applications, right? So you have your ops and safety application, your vehicle application, and your regional application, right? And I highly recommend, if you have the time, to submit all 3, okay? I also want to let you know, if you are going to be applying for a micro grant, then that application you're submitting, that ops and safety application you're submitting, becomes your main ops and safety application. I will talk about micro grants later on, okay? Your EMS agencies, you're also allowed to submit all 3 applications. And again, state fire training academies, you can request many of the same things. However, again, you have your own separate application. All right, in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about ops and safety application. All right, in your ops and safety application, you can apply for something such as equipment, PPE, your modifications to facilities such as source capture exhaust systems, a washer or dryer, and then finally your wellness and fitness. Okay, each one of these items moves separately during the scoring process, and you can ask for as many of these items as you like. All right, but that's if you have the time to develop your application. If you do have the time, then by all means do so. However, if you do not have the time, I would really highly focus on the items that you really do need the most, okay? Because each item that you do apply for has to have a narrative associated with it. I don't want you getting bogged down with 10 different items and 10 different narratives. I'd rather have you focus on 3 items with 3 solid narratives, all right? Just really focus on the items you really need the most. All right, we're going to start off with your ops and safety application. We're going to start off with your equipment section. All right, I talked about swim lanes earlier. All right, when you're asking for equipment, there are 3 things that will be looked at when you do ask for the specific items, right? We look at your department type, your community classification, whether you're rural, suburban, or urban, and you'll be scored against other departments like yours, okay? The item type, and then finally, and then the item type, okay? All of these items will have its own separate swim lane I talked about earlier, and the best application in each group will get the highest amount of points, which is 100%, right? Everyone else will need to get to at least 70% of that scoring phase, So if there is a leader in each category at 100%, every application needs to get it to at least 70%. All right. So the closer you are to the leader, the more points you get. Right. And there are factors to these points, right? And these factors include the priority of the item you're requesting. If it's a high priority item, the purpose for the request. All right. I'm going to talk about the purpose of request in the next few slides. The age of equipment. Remember, the older, the better. Okay. Call volume. And if your members are trained on the specific item you're requesting, all of that is weighted. It matters. All right, so here's a snapshot or a snippet of the equipment section in the NOFO, okay? And you notice the blue M and the red H on the screen, okay? All right, again, I mentioned earlier, you just want to reiterate, you choose anything with the blue M or a gray L, it's going to get eliminated or most likely get eliminated. When you're reading the NOFO, keep in mind that not everything is available for an individual department to apply. You'll see it on the screen, okay? You will see a blue M and a red H side by side, okay? Be very careful. It's a little tricky. What this means is that for an individual fire department applying for, let's say, an air compressor, that is considered a medium priority item. And if your priority is an air compressor or cascade system for this year, I highly recommend you do not apply for it. However, if you are a regional applicant, you are applying for an air compressor cascade system, by all means apply for it. It is a red H or high priority item, right? And that is why I said earlier, read the NOFO thoroughly. It's gonna give you a bunch of information that you do need. All right, so I did want to dive a little bit deeper into with the equipment. All right, and you see on the screen that says basic equipment, okay? High priority is given to the basic equipment, which is simply equipment that you carry on your fire truck, engine, utility truck, rescue truck, every day. Nothing fancy or high tech, okay? Also, take a look at the RIT pack at the end. And you see it's listed under equipment, okay? If you request a RIT pack alone, it is considered equipment, and that's fine. However, if you request a RIT pack along with an SCBA, it's going to get rejected, right? You see RIT pack, it's part of the equipment category. SCBAs are part of your PPE category, which I'll talk about in the next few slides. If you need a RIT pack with SCBA, you need to add the RIT pack as an additional funding item within the PPE activity for the SCBA, okay? I talked about the training question earlier, and the training question is weighted. This is very important. And here's a screenshot of the equipment or of this training question in your ops and safety application, where it's going to ask you about equipment training, okay? Is your department trained in the proper use of equipment being requested? If you are not trained in the use of the equipment you are requesting, you will not get awarded, okay? For each piece of equipment that you request, you will be asked a series of 3 questions, right? Hold on a second. The first question is your department trained in the proper use of the equipment being requested? If you are, just answer yes, and we do believe you. Second question is, are you requesting funding to train your department on the use of the equipment that you're requesting because you are not currently trained to use it? All right. You will want to answer yes to question number 2. If the case is if this is the case, you want to add the cost associated with the training as a new line item under your additional funding. All right. And the third question is, if you are not already trained to use the equipment and you are not requesting funding to get the training, you got to answer yes, that you are going to get the training through another source. All right. It's really important. You have to answer yes to at least one of these questions. If you do not, you will get a low score, and again, you will get rejected. So please answer yes to one of these questions. All right, so make sure when you are determining what to ask for that you can explain how receiving these items that is going to have a direct effect on firefighter health and safety. All right, firefighter, first responder health and safety is always a concern and a high priority for us at AFG and at FEMA. Okay, in the narratives, we want to know that the funding we're providing will benefit your health and safety. Okay. Age is also an important part of the scoring process. I said it before, older is always better when you're considering what to ask for. If you're replacing equipment, make sure you include the date of the manufacturer. All right, so if you have turnout gear, just don't use the date that you purchased the item, the turnout gear. Use the date of the manufacturer. So just lift up the little flap, the little flap in your turnout gear. Take a look at when it was manufactured. It could potentially give you an extra few months, maybe a year. Okay. You'll also want to make sure and articulate that the equipment that you're purchasing will benefit other organizations such as your mutual aid partners. Okay, mutual aid is very important for the AFG life cycle process. So always reiterate and hit hard on you conduct mutual aid. And finally, you want to make sure that this equipment that you're purchasing will bring you up to compliance with national standards, OSHA, NFPA. And you're going to be asked that in the application process. All right, I really just want to quickly talk about the product life cycle. I keep repeating age and keep repeating how older is better. In this slide, you will see the useful life cycle associated with these age categories. I'll give you an example. All right, cardiac monitors are up to 7 years old, right? And this is what we categorize cardiac monitors for a useful life cycle up to 7 years old. Just because you have a cardiac monitor that's 6 years old, it doesn't mean you should put in to replace it at that point, right? Because there is a strong chance you're going to compete with another department that has the same monitor that is significantly older, all right? All right, so here is the second item or third item that is weighted, okay? The purpose question. After you identify what items you need, you will be asked a follow-up question regarding its purpose, like why do you need it? All right, the answer to the follow-up purpose question is going to make or break your application. It is highly weighted. When you choose the item you're requesting, you will be asked the purpose for why you're requesting the item. Okay? My advice here, high priority items that you're requesting has to coincide with the high priority purpose answer you choose. For example, if you are requesting equipment that you do not currently own or damaged beyond repair, you should use this first bullet point, right, where it says to obtain equipment needed but not currently owned, or replace equipment that is broken or damaged beyond repair. Okay. If you are requesting to replace equipment that is just no longer compliant, right, that is a second, use the second bullet point item right here. All right. You want to replace non-compliant equipment to current standards. And you see these last two bullets right here, the medium and low priority item. Stay away from that, please. Make sure you stick with the high priority items. All right, I'm going to talk about PPE and SCBAs. Same applies for scoring considerations. You have that swim lane. And just like the scoring factor I talked about with the equipment, the process works the same way for PPE. And the more points you get, the higher your score will be. In this case, with PPE, these points include factors that are weighted, such as the priority of the item you're requesting, high priority items, the purpose of the request. I just talked about that in the last slide, right? It's going to have its own set of purpose questions for a PPE, the age of the PPE being requested, the older the better. For SCBAs, if you are NFPA 1981 compliant, that's great. And if you are trained to use the PPE, and finally the call volume. These are all weighted. Okay. All right, so when you're conducting those, the risk assessment I mentioned earlier, you want to seek out the PPE that's a minimum 10 years old or older. And for SCBA, it must be also 10 years old or older, but also be 2 cycles out of compliance with NFPA 1981. And for FY25 application, to be considered a high priority item or high priority for replacement, your SCBA must either meet the 2013 edition for NFPA 1981 standards or be older than that. Again, in order to be competitive, you got to remember, the older, the better. All right, here's another screenshot of the NOFO on the priority items. And take a look at all the high priority items you have, right? All right, and now at the bottom, take a look at the medium priority items, right? You have your ballistic PPE, chem and bio suits, splash suits, proximity suits, okay? I know it could get tempting that you want to put in chem and bio suits, and you might need that. But again, it is not a priority for us. It's not a high priority for us. It's a medium priority. So stick with the basic PPE items, boots, coats, gloves, complete set of turnout gear. All right. I cannot stress enough to check and double check the NOFO. You got to remember, AFG is meant to give you basic firefighting equipment. All right, so the PPE purpose question has its own sets of criteria, okay? If you are requesting turnout gear for firefighters that do not have it, or if you have a riding position on your apparatus that does not have an SCBA assigned to them, you want to use the first high priority answer, which is to increase supply for new hires, existing firefighters that do not have one set of turnout gear, PPE, or an allocated seated position for SCBAs, okay? If you are requesting SCBAs or turnout gear that is damaged, it's torn apart, it's falling off, and it's unusable or unrepairable, but still in service, right? You want to use the second bullet point where it says replace in service, in use, damaged, unsafe, unrepairable PPE or SCBAs. And finally, the final high priority bullet point, right? If you are simply replacing your SCBA or turnout gear to meet the current standards, you're going to want to use the last bullet point, which is to replace in service, in use, expired, or non-compliant PPE or SCBAs to current standards. It's very important that you put in for what it's specifically asking for. Okay, if you're going to put in for replacement of turnout gear because it's unsafe, you click on that specific bullet point or click on that for that answer. It's going to open up a set of questions it's going to ask you for that specific bullet point. Okay. Same thing goes with the increased supply for new hires and replacing in service, in use, expired, non-compliant PPE. It's going to set up the next few questions based off what you choose. So please be careful about that. All right. So I want to give you a heads up. In your application, you'll need to list all of your PPE and how old each item is. Okay. Call volume is, I said it before, is used as a tiebreaker when PPE applications are scored. The program also wants to make sure every firefighter or riding positions that needs SCBAs has gear that meets the standard as well. Okay, as I discussed it earlier for equipment, there will be the same training questions asked in each item requested for SCBAs or PPE. Okay, the program will not award equipment that you are not trained to use. So it is critical that the answers to one of these questions has to be yes. I said it before, equipment. I'll say it again now in PPE. I've seen it already in the last few weeks. Recipients or applicants that put in for an award got rejected because they did not put in any item at all that they are trained in. So please make sure you click on one of these items that you're going to be trained in. All right, so now you have your wellness and fitness section for the ops and safety application. So wellness and fitness has 2 priority levels, right? If you want to go after priority 2, you got to prove your department already has or is planning to set up the 5 programs listed here that is priority 1. all right? Periodic health screenings, entry physical examinations, immunizations, behavioral health programs, and cancer screenings. All right. If you're missing any of the following, any of the below, you will not qualify for those extra items. However, unfortunately, once you've shown you've got priority one wellness and fitness programs, you have that priority, you can go after priority two items. But again, unfortunately, for some reason, this year, AFG has categorized priority two items as a medium priority item. Okay. All right, so now we have your modifications to facilities. So for your modifications to facilities, you have items such as your direct source, excuse me, direct source capture exhaust systems. You have sprinkler systems, smoke and fire alarm systems that can be retrofitted into your station. All right, the highest priority will be given to applicants requesting a first-time installation of a source capture exhaust system. Okay, if you already have it, and it is a high priority item, but priority will be given to individuals that have first-time application or first-time usage of it. In order for your request to be the highest priority, the station being impacted the most or impacted must have sleeping quarters and be occupied 24/7. All right. You have to have individuals staying there or it has to be occupied 24/7. There are three high priority items under this activity. I just talked about that earlier. Okay. Also, the maximum allowage per station that we do offer is $100,000. Okay. And finally, training. Training is the last section of the ops and safety application. The one thing we hear at FEMA that we do love the most is training. If you know anything about FEMA, FEMA loves its training. Training is expensive and it's really tough to coordinate, but we will pay for it. Again, take a look at the NOFO, see if there's any training in there that you want to send your staff to. All right. I know you have your firefighter 1, you have firefighter 2, you have BLS, ALS, EMT, EMR, EVOC. FEMA will pay for it if you get awarded. And just a note, in order for your training to be the highest priority, it must be led by an instructor that is certified to provide that training. All right. All right, micro grants. I talked about this in the first few slides. Micro grants are a really neat option and it's very, very popular. And micro grants are an option under your ops and safety application. A micro grant is a request that is less than $75,000 and can be for any one of the 5 listed activities on the screen: equipment, PPE, training, wellness and fitness, and priorities, modifications to facility. All right. I want to mention it. A micro grant is an option, right? So in your application, you're going to see a little tab that says, "Are you applying for a micro grant?" You click on yes or no. If you apply for a micro grant, if you click on yes, under any of these activities, it then becomes your ops and safety application. All right. And you can only apply for a micro grant. Okay. You cannot apply for a second ops and safety application. For example, you cannot apply for a micro grant PPE washer that is less than $75,000 and do a second application for SCBAs. You can only choose one application type. All right, so micro grants essentially are intended to help applicants that have not been successful in the past year. Right? For example, for each micro grant application, the system is going to look back over the past 5 years to determine if the applicant has been successful or not. If you have not been successful, then the applicant can receive up to 3 additional points toward their pre-score stage, okay, or towards their pre-score. And depending on how many times they've also applied and how many times if they have not received an award, right? A micro grant only competes with other micro grants. It doesn't compete with ops and safety application or your regional application. It's only going to compete with other micro grants. All right, so we're going to talk about your second application that you hopefully you could apply for, and it's vehicles. So for vehicles, a lot of people are interested in a vehicle, right? It's very popular, and I would definitely be interested in a vehicle myself. If I could get it free through AFG, why not, right? That is the issue. There are so many people that are interested in the AFG, and the vehicle application. That the problem is that we give out so few each year, which makes it so competitive, right? The last year or the year before, the turn down rate was between 80 and 85%. It was very high. Vehicle application is a high priority item and is meant to replace unsafe vehicles, right? If the vehicle you're trying to replace is is an open cab or a jump seat, and believe it or not, there are a lot of departments that still have open cabs or jump seats, or it's built prior to 1992, or if the vehicle it's converted, you have a chance, right? If the vehicle is 15 years old, good luck, you will not have a chance. The vehicle program is super competitive and the turn down rate is very high. But again, it doesn't hurt to apply. All of these applications are free. So if you have the time, put in for all of these applications. All right, we'll go on to the final application type, which is the regional application. All right, so I mentioned regional applications before, where you could get together with your mutual aid partners. And again, put in mutual aid is a very big sticking point, right? Regional grants are attractive to us at FEMA or AFG because it allows us to serve more communities, more firefighters, fire departments, all right? A regional request is a good opportunity where you can combine the application with one or more other agencies, could be two, could be three agencies or departments, to request a common need, right? What are the same item or same item that we do need, all right? You can get together with surrounding departments on a brainstorm network, talk about your mutual interest that you have. Let's just say you all need you have common needs such as radios, right? P25 portable radios. If your radios are out of date and you want to get a new radio, you can go in on a regional application and with your mutual aid partner and apply, okay? Also, two or more departments can put in for a vehicle application or vehicle request in your regional application. However, that vehicle itself has to benefit all of the departments that are involved, all right? Not just your department, it has to benefit all the departments involved, all right? And just because you submitted a regional request doesn't mean you can't submit an ops and safety request. You can do both. The only catch is you cannot submit the same thing, right? Go back to portable radios, your P25 compliant portable radios. You could put in for a portable radio for your regional application, but you cannot put a portable radio for your regular ops and safety application. You got to choose something different. All right, so now we discussed the application types and what goes into the application itself. Okay, now we're going to discuss the narratives. This is very important. There are 5 narrative boxes, and I'm going to talk about each box and one by one, right? But before you start typing up the narratives, I want to give you just some general advice and tips. And the advice in this slide applies to the other narrative boxes as well, right? And also, potentially could be used for the SAFER and FP&S application, right? We want you to write your narrative tailored to your department and your community, right? We want to know what is unique about your department and the people that you serve. So really focus in on yourselves. We don't want to know what the national standards are, right? For example, if you're putting in for the portable radios, we don't want to see a copy and paste of what a portable radio does within the national standards. We want to see how that portable radio is used with your department and within your department, okay? All right, if you're asking for a thermal image cameras or portables, like I said earlier, you want to discuss why you need it and how you use it to support your department and how your department operates it, right? You want to be able to stand out as the best, right? The best way. So you want to make your department you want to seem like they're very unique to the application. You're going to have hundreds and hundreds of applications, and the peer reviewers are going to review the narratives. You want to show how unique your department is, okay? Right. So the peer review panel that I mentioned earlier, it is made up of fellow fire service members. All right. You want to make yourself relatable to a first responder. You want to talk shop, use lingo like a first responder, because that's who your audience is. All right. Don't forget that you are expressing yourself as a first responder in need. All right. Why do I need this? This is very important for my community, my fire department, to keep my firefighters safe. That is why we need it, right? When you develop your narrative, you want to ask a friend, or even better yet, ask another first responder to proofread the final product, okay? I say proofread, I'm not saying check for grammar or punctuation, which is very important, but is not as important as expressing yourself as a first responder in need, okay? Also, I don't know why, but stay away from using brand names. I don't know why we don't like it at FEMA, but we do not like using brand names. So try to stick the type of equipment, not the manufacturer that makes it. And finally, always focus on the red H, the high priority items throughout the entire program and your narratives. All right, this is very, very, very helpful, okay? And I highly, highly recommend you utilize this. The self-evaluation sheets will be used during the peer review panel process. All right, I was a chair panelist last year, and we handed these self-evaluation sheets out to the panelists. Okay, so during the panels, the AFG staff will again hand out these self-help resources. We're going to give a little prep, a little brief, a little pep talk to the reviewers, and how to go about in reviewing the narratives. We're going to say, hey, take a look at these self-evaluation sheets. These are some things to look for when you do review your narrative. When we do review our narrative. So yeah, utilize these sheets. They give the exact criteria that the panelists will be using to review your narrative. The next great resource is the Narrative Development Toolkit, okay? This tool uses the self-evaluation sheets to give you additional tips and tricks on how you can meet the criteria listed in the self-evaluation sheets. It also provides you with the best practice when developing your narrative and sample narratives to give you a feel for how your narrative should flow, okay? It's going to utilize the self-evaluation sheets, and it's also going to give you sample narratives. Okay. All right. So here are the 5 boxes, the 5 narratives that you're going to have to write, right? And as you can see, 4 of these are graded and 1 is not graded. And the very first narrative is the description of organization or the communities that you serve. Okay. Even though, so this is the first narrative that is not graded. Even though this is not scored or graded, do not be fooled. This is the most important narrative, okay? What you're doing is basically giving a good description of your community and a description of your agency, right? And this is all about your department. This is all about you. This is the first narrative box that the peer reviewers sees, right? They're gonna learn everything that is to know about your department and the community that you serve. They're going to learn about what makes you unique, what makes your department unique, what makes it stand out the most against the 1,000 or so, 2,000 or so applications. That is why it is the most important box. You want to be able to captivate your audience. You want to capture their attention right here in the beginning. You want them to really care about the remaining 4 narratives. So really focusing on this narrative, right? If you do not capture their narrative here, there's a chances are they may lose interest for the remaining narratives. Again, they have 1 week to work on the narratives of peer review panels. They're going to sort through hundreds of applications. and that you do not want them to lose interest on your application. Okay, what makes your application unique? All right, think of it this way, right? You want to get into it. Like, think of it this way. Like, think of it as you watching a new TV show or a new TV series, right? Most of the time, if that first episode that you're watching on a new TV show, right? Sons of Anarchy, Stranger Things, or whatever the case may be, that first episode, if that first episode doesn't catch your attention, you're not watching the rest of the series. You just should look on for the next series or the next TV show, right? You want to make sure that the narrative, that this narrative right here, the community and agency's description, will convince the peer reviewers that they're going to have interest for the remaining narratives. All right. The next narrative, which is the project description and budget. And at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned something about doing a risk assessment, right? This narrative right here is where you want to jot that down, that you did a risk assessment and you completed the risk assessment, and it's going to score you a lot of points, right? Right. You do not need to get creative with this narrative, the project description and budget. All right. I really want you to focus on 4 steps. Okay. All right. So step 1, you want to identify your problem. Okay. Step 2, what is the solution to that problem? Okay. Step 3, how much will it cost? And step 4, how long will it take to complete the project? All right. And this is where you add the risk assessment. So this risk assessment, this little project description and budget is going to sound like something like this. We did a risk assessment and we found the following problems. These items are super old. You're asking for portable radios and turnout gear. The portable radio and turnout gear is super old. It's falling apart. It's not working anymore. It's not compliant anymore. They do not work. All right. And the solution to that problem is to use AFG funding to purchase this equipment, right? And that this equipment, this portable radio and turnout gear, will better help protect our firefighters and our community, right? It's going to cost this amount of money. And it will get done within 2 years of the POP, of the peer to performance. And the reason why I say 2 years of the peer to performance is because that is how long this application or this grant award life cycle will be from when you get awarded to close out. So it's 2 years to complete your award. All right, so we'll go on to the financial need narrative. And this is where you are going to convince the panelists that there is no way at all that you can complete this project on your own without asking for federal funds. And I hate to say it, right? You're going to have to seem like you're desperate for federal funds, even if you don't want to. Again, you're competing against hundreds of other departments. What makes you stand out the most, right? You want to seem like you're desperate. And I do apologize for saying that. All right. We're also going to want to see the efforts you made to make money, whether it's through fundraising, a bake sale, or you're going door to door asking for donations, boot drives. What have you done to earn money to be able to pay this off? And what efforts did you do to try to complete this project on your own? That is what we want to know. And this is super important. Make sure you put together a breakdown of your internal department's budget, how much you have going in and how much you have going out, right? You want to also mention if you have any capital project eating away at your budget, we want to know about it, right? If you have that 30-year-old pumper or 30-year-old tower ladder that just keeps on breaking down and you need to keep pumping money into it to get it repaired and fixed, it's leaking oil all the time. That's something you want to put down. You got to say what you're spending your budget money on and that this is why you can't afford to complete this project by yourself. All right, the cost benefit narrative. And this is your opportunity to show the benefits of the project as it relates to the cost. We wanted to show how far you could stretch the dollar, right? And this is the part of the narrative that is very project driven. So as many of the benefits will be determined by what is exactly it is that you're purchasing and the impact that it has on your department. You want to explain that in here, right? So essentially, this is where you want to talk about how that small amount of money that FEMA is going to give me is going to help this many people in our community and how we're going to keep this many firefighters safe. You want to show how far you could stretch that dollar. All right. And some things that you want to consider or you want to consider adding in are how the benefits to their firefighters or the benefits to public safety, how this is going to decrease the property loss or the loss of life. You want to include the frequency of use, and also it's going to decrease the overhead administrative costs. It's going to decrease your insurance premiums or maintenance costs. Okay, this is where you want to include any mutual aid benefits. Right. Again, earlier I talked about mutual aid and regional applications. Mutual aid is a huge sticking point for us. Right. If you give us this equipment, we're going to be able to help out 5 or 6 other communities in our neighboring jurisdictions. All right. Not only is our community and our firefighters going to benefit from this, we're going to be able to help this other community, which has a huge population in addition to ours. Include that in here. And finally is the statement of effect narrative. All right. It is the last narrative. This narrative is essentially a conclusion. You're going to take the main points, the main talking points from the first 4 boxes, and you're going to compile them into a summary. And you're going to talk about how this AFG award will help your community and firefighters. Okay. As with the cost benefit, the statement of effect narrative is very project driven. Okay. However, in this section, you want to show the benefits of the project as it relates to your daily operations. Okay. You want to describe how the project will improve operations or make your department more viable and effective. How is it on a day-to-day basis that portable radio is going to help make your firefighters more viable and effective? You want to see that it's going to be utilizing your SOP and SOGs. Okay. You want to discuss any reductions in risk to firefighters or the public. You wanted to thoroughly explain how often the equipment will be used when you do receive it. Okay. You'll also want to talk about the impacts that the project may have on firefighter health and the public safety. All right. All right. We're almost done here. All right. So you're at the home stretch and you completed the purpose questions and you completed your narratives and you're ready to hit the submit button. But right before you do that, I really recommend you take a look at these documents. Okay. The cost share, you had the cost share calculator, the self-evaluation sheets, checklist, the narrative development toolkit that I talked about earlier. All right. Before you hit the submit button, take a look at these resources. These resources are also found on the AFG program website. Okay. Also, after the presentation, maybe today or tomorrow, I'm going to send a bunch of these resources in an email over to Jesse, and he will disseminate these user guides and even the PowerPoint or workshop. He's going to send that over to you guys. Okay. Also, just don't forget that there is the AFG newsletter that we do highly recommend you sign up on. Again, if you have any questions with the application process, you can reach out to me for any reason at all. You can also reach out to the AFG help desk, right? It is staffed daily, and the number is on the screen. And also you can give them an email. All right, so this concludes the AFG development workshops. Again, thank you everyone for joining in on the call today. I know it's an evening. I know that everyone's tired. Thank you again for this, and thank you for allowing me to present today. At the last
My apologies, guys. I had too many tabs open and I quite frankly couldn't find the screen. Okay. Are we ready for question and answer, Alvin? My apologies.
Yes, I'm ready for questions and answers.
Okay, great. We've got a question from David. Question for you at the end. If I am reading the NOFO correctly, a county EMO could not directly apply to benefit the departments in their county, even though the county EMO is the fire coordinator for the county and operates the fire as the fire investigator for the county, which I believe should be high priority. I think you can also see that in the chat. I think we're talking about eligibility and can the county apparatus apply? So the final part of that. So the main way the county MO could benefit their departments is only by assisting them in applying if they are applying as an individual department. Is that correct? Let's talk about what agencies should be interested in applying or filling out as the grant applicant.
Okay, yeah. So the main agencies are actually the individual departments themselves. If you're applying as a county, um, the eligibility requirements does not allow you to apply as a county, actually. And I could talk to you offline about that. I think I did discuss it, or I did get a question in the past about it. So if he has a question, or if he could actually reach out to me and we could discuss that, because I think it might be a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
So if he could please reach out to me, and then that way we could go over it. But most likely what he might have to do is have a individual department host the application, and the other departments could apply under that one department.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm putting my name in David. I'm putting my name in a response to that. Just send me a text message with your email. If you have Alvin's email, you can message him directly. If you want to send me a text, I can loop you in an email tomorrow morning or tonight. Okay. Let's see. Stay organized. What is the typical age of the ambulance that qualifies for replacement?
I've seen ages that range from, for an ambulance is a little bit different. All right. So I've seen ages that range from 2006 and below. For a little bit newer than that, I haven't seen too many ambulances that were approved or awarded, but I have seen 2006 and below.
Okay, 2006 and below.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking at a good amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One, thank you. This was all very helpful. Is there any sort of similar webinar for firefighter research purposes? Andrew, this is specifically for AFG. But if there's something that you guys think would be helpful for us to bring as a resource to the district like this, we're all ears. We would love to put on programs like this. And because of the wide distance that you have to travel, it's about 3.5 to 4 hours end to end from one end of the district to the other. So happy to do virtual resource programs like this where everybody can jump on from the comfort of their home or office without having to drive to a central point, because frankly, the district's so big, we don't really have a central point. But we can look into that. I'll take a screenshot of that and see if we can find some resources for you. Alvin, any other comments, firefighter research purposes, similar webinars for other programs that you do?
So in terms of that, I would highly recommend, going on the AFG program website. It's going to discuss SAFER and FP&S as well. Those are the other grant programs that we do offer. So it's going to, I think the SAFER, if you go on to click on the website link, it's going to give you options to join in on any webinars or workshops that they're conducting for SAFER and FP&S, because I think they do host their own for those two programs.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a question? You can unmute yourself. I think if someone wants to unmute yourself and ask yourself, you can. I don't see anybody. But I will be sending along the information that Alvin sends me as backup information. I'm going to do my best to get this uploaded the right way, get through some technical barriers, but I am attempting to record this for future dissemination. And we are very happy to assist anybody with individual questions pertaining to their application. The deadline is the 22nd of this month, correct, Alvin?
Yes, the 22nd is the deadline at 5 p.m.
Oh, 22nd at 5 p.m.
Yes.
If everybody that is on this call who's applying, please let us know. You have our contact information. You're also just welcome to call the office. I'm going to put my cell phone in the chat one more time so it's easy to access. The Congressman would love to write a letter of support for your application. Like he said, he would like to see every dollar possible come back to the district and support your efforts. So we would love to have a letter. We can turn around pretty quickly, but obviously the more time, the more thorough we can be with your narrative. So we would love to supply that letter. Alvin, anything else you think we got to go over?
That's really about it. I think what a really good tip is when you're typing up your narratives, there's really like 4,000 characters that you could put in for. So I highly recommend use MS Word or something like that, and then just type in your narratives in MS Word, and just make sure you keep track of your word count on there. That's going to help you out a lot. Um, I'm hoping that the link that I do provide you and also the resources that I provide you as well will be able to help you out. So please keep in mind the self-evaluation sheet and the application development toolkits as well.
Wonderful. Last call for questions, ladies and gentlemen, at least on live. We'll be available for the rest of the month to help you through with whatever you need. I think they got everything they were looking for today, Alvin. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
My
everybody.
pleasure.
Have a wonderful night. Look forward to speaking with you soon.